Welcome to episode 31 of America in Crisis, Breaking the Cycle of Addiction. My name is David Hunt and I am your host. Please hit your DVRs to record. This show could save your child's life. We will start with an update from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. In the first quarter of 2022, there have been 551 opioid-related deaths. Our guest today is Shannon Lundin. Shannon is the Director of Recovery and Community Engagement at Chapters Recovery Center in Danvers. She is a Charlestown native and a person in long-term recovery for 18 years. Shannon holds an associate's licensure in social work, a certification in alcohol and drug counseling. Shannon is also a certified recovery coach and recovery coach supervisor. She is also a certified community health educator and trained and certified in psychological first aid and is part of the Charlestown Trauma Response Team. Shannon also regularly facilitates Narcan trainings and grief support groups specific to those who have lost loved ones to addiction-related deaths. Shannon, welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, we'll start off. What is the Trauma Response Team?
So the Charlestown Trauma Response Team was formed in 2016, and it is under the Charlestown Coalition, which is under the Mass General Hospital umbrella. And it started out as a group of residents who just wanted to learn about trauma and the impacts it has on the community and really learn how to best serve the community during traumatic situations such as community violence, overdose, substance use, things like that. And we've had quite a few of those things happen in the Charlestown community.
Now, how do they respond? How do you find out there's been a problem? Do the parents call you? Do the police call you? How do they get to you?
So there is a trauma response phone line, and so each of the members of the trauma response team takes turns holding the phone, basically. So it's a phone number that we put out to the community that they can call, and we try to respond within 24 hours. Also, Charlestown is a very small 1 square mile, and it's kind of a place where everybody knows everybody and everything, news travels fast. So what we try to do is we go right to the scene of whatever's happening, whether it's an overdose, whether it's community violence, fire, and we just use basic tools to work with the individuals who are impacted at that time. We do some breathing exercises, getting them to drink water is really important, and getting them connected to the basic resources that they need at that moment in time.
Now, I see a lot of initials after your name, after your title. What are some of the trainings other people have had other than yourself? We'll go into your training in a couple of minutes.
So yes, so we got our trainings with the Boston Public Health Commission and Dr. William Macy, who works with the International Trauma Center.
Okay.
And so that's really where we learned a lot about the psychological first aid and the impacts that trauma has on individuals and communities. So we were trained in 2014.
Now, you were with the Coalition, I believe, for about 13 years or so.
Yep.
What trainings have you personally had and received from them?
So I worked with the Charlestown Coalition for 13, 14 years. It started out as the Charlestown Substance Abuse Coalition at first, where our focus was substance use, and it's evolved into a lot more since then. While the coalition still focuses on substance use, the primary focus is social determinants of health. So we've done a lot of trainings, just around addiction, about prevention and education, Narcan and overdose, signs and symptoms, the psychological first aid, like I had just mentioned, a lot of racial conversations, racial discussions, cultural competencies, you name it, just whatever we could learn in order to best serve the community.
Now, with COVID going around for the last few years and more people stressed out, have you seen an increased use in that local area?
I did, and so when everything shut down, like the meetings, for instance, which is one of the #1 tools that people in recovery use on a daily basis, it was really challenging because people started drinking more, people started using more, isolating, and I did see a spike in overdose-related deaths.
So you must have been very busy back then.
I was very busy. I really had to think outside the box and build unbreakable networks of support for the population that I served.
Nice. Now, I understand you're in long-term recovery. Obviously, you've had experience with substance abuse, and people say, you know, I can talk about this personally all day. I've never used, never abused, so I can talk about it, but I've never been there. Shannon has been there and understands what the person has gone through. So what about your experience? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah.
Especially your recovery. Start with your recovery.
Yeah, so I've been in recovery for 18 years. My recovery date is May 15th, 2004. One thing that I always say that I'm really, really grateful for is not just for the fact that I'm in recovery, but the fact that I got it at 25 years old. It's not a very common thing that a person my age who was an IV heroin user and overdosed multiple times herself, coming from a small knit community where we had the highest fatal overdose rates in Massachusetts, that it's just not a common thing that someone my age would have this long in recovery.
Now, I understand there's a program called Turn It Around, and we should have logo popping up any time now.
Yeah.
What is Turn It Around? Can you explain that to our guests?
Yeah, so Turn It Around is a youth program, and that started in 2012 under the Charlestown Coalition.
Okay.
And so my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 23, her name's Lainey, she was an original member, so she was one of the founding members of Turn It Around. And it started out as a social media campaign where they focused on the dangers of prescription drug misuse. And that has also evolved into so much more where the folks who work at the coalition and Turn It Around, they work with the youth in the community, you know, and they focus on youth risk protective factors and make sure that they have a healthy adults in their life, you know, and just kind of guide them through life's challenges and life situations.
Sounds like an awesome program. How do you guys get funded? Who's behind you for this?
So Turn It Around, you know, counts on donations and fundraising, but MGH is really the backbone for the Turn It Around program.
And they've been from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay, now the tough questions.
Okay.
At what age and how did you get introduced to drugs? How did it start?
So I would say for me, so like I grew up in a single parent home. My mother was a single mother, taking care of 4 kids on her own, working under the table on welfare to take care of us. My father was an alcoholic and an addict, and he was in and out of my life till I was about 10. And so one of the things that I always say is I believe that trauma is the gateway drug. And so I always think back to one of my first childhood traumatic experiences, and it was when I would witness my father physically abusing my mother. And so I would just remember at a very young age feeling like something was wrong with me, and I thought something had to be wrong with me because this man who's supposed to love and protect and provide doesn't do that, so it must be me. So I always had these feelings of unworthiness, but I had my first drink at the age of 12, and so you know, it was at that age where, that awkward age for a girl, and I was hanging out with boys, and I wanted to be able to like loosen up, and I loved the feeling that it gave me. And so at the same time, there was a part of me that just thought that that was a part of growing up, and it was a part of life, and I never knew that it would bring me to where it brought me.
So basically being in the crowd with the people, they're doing something, it gets offered to you. Did you ever think at the beginning, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or did you just want to go with the crowd?
I mean, there was a part of me that knew it was wrong, but at the same time, it wasn't necessarily wanting to go with the crowd. It was just not wanting to, I guess I wanted to feel part of, but at the same time, I think it was a lot to do with just not wanting to be in my own skin.
Oh. Did you enjoy the alcohol at that age, or did you like spit it out? Oh my God,
I didn't enjoy the taste of it,
That's
but
what I'm getting
enjoyed the feeling that it gave me, and I couldn't wait to do it again.
So if you can get by the flavor, the reward was worth it. I can see how that could happen, absolutely. Can you share with us what drug or drugs you were involved in?
Yeah, I was definitely a polysubstance user, you know, but like I just said, I had my first drink at the age of 12, and it progressed from there, you know, to marijuana, to pills, to cocaine, and I was doing some club drugs for a little while. The thing I liked about doing cocaine was that I could drink more, and it was only a matter of time before I started doing OxyContin, and then that became too expensive, and you know, I chose to start doing heroin, and that's what brought me to my knees.
Can I ask what age was that on the timeline?
I was doing OxyContins in my teens, so that was like 17, 18, 19, but 20 is when I started doing heroin.
Can you explain to our viewers what effects each one of these drugs had on you and why you went to another one?
So, I mean, they're all different types of drugs, right? And so, you know, cocaine is more of an upper, and, you know, like I said, I liked that I could drink more, and Klonopins are a downer, and you can kind of chill out. You know, the club drug scene, you know, ecstasy, it's all in its name. You know, you get really happy and warm, and you love everybody, but then you're extremely depressed the next day. OxyContin is a painkiller, right? So like not only did it kill any physical pain I might have had, but it killed the emotional pain, but only for a little while. It was only a temporary fix. But you become physically addicted, right? And so when doing OxyContin, those were very, very expensive, right? So they had OxyContins in different milligrams. So you had to take 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 pills just to feel normal. And you know, it was at that point when I turned to heroin because it was cheaper and more potent.
When you took these, I know it was recreationally, but did you ever get a dependence saying after the high wore off, oh my God, I've got to go out and buy another one, I need this feeling? Did it ever get to that stage?
Yeah, I mean, for a while, I thought everything I was doing was recreational, and it was just part of life and part of growing up, you know? And then, you know, I was 25 and I had nothing going for me. I had nothing to show for my life, and I had a young daughter at the time. Yeah, it got to a point where it was, I wanted to do it because I wanted to chase that feeling that I first had when I first did heroin, but you just never get that feeling again. But then it gets to a point where you need to do it just so that you're not sick. That's
what I've heard from people that take the Oxy, they get hurt in a traffic accident, a construction job, the doctor prescribes it, and now they just want to get back to normal. The doctor says, okay, you're fine, the bone is healed, and it's like, okay, I don't need the painkiller because of pain, but this is in my system, I can't get out of bed without it, and that's the people your heart goes out to.
Yeah, and it's true, and like, you know, when I worked for MGH, I worked a lot with the primary care physicians and the prescribing doctors, and I sat on an addictions team where we discussed high-risk patients on a weekly basis. And, you know, I've had quite a few clients at the time, or patients, say to me, you know, I had to get on this medication because I had this surgery or I got hurt. And I feel like the doctors put me on it, they should help me get off.
Unfortunately, when you do a show like this and you hear how people get hooked, I underwent surgery a few months ago that hospitalized me for 8 days. And there's a little switch that lets you every 8 minutes, it's a painkiller. You're supposed to push the switch and it gives you a nice dose of painkiller. I'm like, wait a minute, every 8 minutes I can take a drug of painkiller. I refuse to use the thing. My doctor comes in and is like, okay, I'm going to help you go to the restroom. You didn't push the switch. Yes, I did. No, right up there on the thing. You haven't pushed it since yesterday. Unfortunately, you almost get terrified of wanting to take a drug, thinking it's going to addict you. And they're like, nope, that's why you can push it every 8 minutes, because it's a little trickle. You're not going to get hooked on this stuff. And unfortunately, what goes through your mind, sure, I know everything, so what do the doctors know? I was literally terrified to use a painkiller, thinking I'm going to get hooked on it, which wasn't the case, obviously, but it goes through your mind, do I really want to take this? Is it like an Oxy? Am I going to get hooked on this stuff to feel good? So unfortunately, I have information that went to my head on this one, that I actually should have taken the painkiller. But question back for you.
Yeah.
You've been taking multiple drugs. Did you ever worry, or did you ever actually get a chance to overdose?
Yes, I overdosed multiple times. And so one of the things that, you know, I always think about, especially with the people that I work with today who are in active addiction, is, you know, when I was using, it was real heroin.
Okay.
You know, now the whole drug supply is completely synthetic. You have chemists concocting these bootleg recipes in their garages and basements, and so every time someone goes out and buys, you know, a bag of heroin, or there's even a lot of pressed pills on the street, you never know what you're going to get. The recipe's different every time.
So this stuff doesn't carry the good housekeeping seal of approval?
Nope.
Oh, no. No UL have a laboratory tested?
Nope. Imagine.
Let's change the subject real quick. I know we're going off. Yep. Marijuana, that's now legal. People, now that they have the opportunity to buy it legally, I'm trying to understand why they're buying it illegally, because I know about the fentanyl lacing it, and in these labs that grow it and sell it legally, recreationally, it's been tested, been approved, under strict control. Why would you say people are still going to their local drug dealer when they can get a product that they know isn't going to be laced with fentanyl?
Well, maybe what the local drug dealer is selling is a different high, or it's more potent, or it's cheaper, or it's just quicker and easier to get. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Whatever's quicker, whatever's faster. Not everybody wants to do it the legal way.
In the open,
right? Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure, when you know the dangers, everyone preaches about the fentanyl lacing, you know your friends have overdosed with fentanyl. Why on earth, if you're going to use the product, are you taking a risk when you can go and get a nice clean one?
I mean, even when you know the dangers, most addicts, if not all, think they're unique, right? And they think what happened to the last 10 people isn't going to happen to them, and that they know how to control their use. So they're going to do whatever they've been doing, what makes most sense to them.
And of course, the young people are indestructible, so nothing
Exactly.
you lie or the doctor says is going to make any difference. Okay, for all you've been through and all you've shared with us, first, thank you very much. It takes
Yes,
a lot of
course.
courage to
Yes.
share that. Obviously, you needed some help. You didn't do it alone. Without saying actual people's names, who did you turn to for help? And you can use the name of an organization, just not individual people.
I didn't really know where to turn to for help at first, to be honest with you. I mean, my mother was fed up with me, right? And so my mother tried all these different approaches. She tried the coddling approach. She tried the begging approach. She tried the tough love approach. And my mother actually had temporary guardianship of my oldest daughter until I got the help that I needed to get. You know, she was at her wit's end. Eventually, I started to turn into a lot of people in the recovery community in Charlestown. I did know some people who had been in recovery for multiple years, and I would reach out to them and ask them questions. I had went to detox multiple times, and you know how that goes. Like, you know, when you're in early recovery or you're just trying to figure this out, a lot of people will just go to detox and spin dry and not go to further care because they're thinking, okay, as long as I get the substance out of my system, I'll figure it out and it'll be okay. But it's not about the substance. It's about all the underlying issues and the unmanageability it brings to your life. Eventually, a program called the Meridian House is what really changed my life dramatically. Meridian House is underneath the North Suffolk Mental Health umbrella. I actually sat on the board of directors for North Suffolk Mental Health for about 8 years. Meridian House is a very structured level of care. It's a TC, which stands for Therapeutic Community. And it's not the same as it was back then in 2004 when I was in the Meridian House, but the Meridian magic is still there, if that makes sense. Meridian House is based on behavior modification, and the reason I went there in the first place is because it was in Charlestown, because it was getting renovated in East Boston, so it was in Charlestown temporarily. So my thought process back then is I'm gonna go to this program in Charlestown where I'm from, and I'm gonna skate right through and get the PO off my back, get my mother off my back, and that's definitely not what happened, but the Meridian House played a huge part in changing my life dramatically.
I'm glad a company like that is out there. May I ask if you want to share what city they're in, if someone wanted to locate them?
The Meridian House is in East Boston at 408 Meridian Street. Like I said, underneath the North Suffolk Mental Health umbrella.
Just a quick word to my audience and viewers. People want to come on my show, and a lot of people out there have substance problems. As you notice, I bring guests on that have been through it, but also have a solution. I could have a line going out this door of people all day that have been in recovery or have done something, but they don't have information that they can give. And this is where I pick my guests from, is people that have a program, people that are working with a nonprofit, people that have a solution. All my shows end with a solution, where you can go as someone that's been through it and someone that's working in it now. This is why I ask and try to highlight these programs that are out there for the community, so you have an option. No one's telling you to go to the Meridian House. If you want to make a phone call and check, that's great. great. All the power to you. I hope it works for you. But we'll mention several programs out there and give you the option what works best for you. So this is where my guests come from and why I pick certain people and why other people don't get on the show, because they really have nothing to share and help with and try to help you. So we're going to go, we've talked about your recovery. Let's go into family. And again, I don't mean to bash mom and dad, but a lot of people aren't trained. They don't see a difference in their kid. When you were growing up, did you change at all? How did they know you were on drugs? You say, Mom, Dad, I have a problem. Or did they start noticing a change in behavior? Again, I'm not faulting parents that don't see a change.
No, I mean, so my father wasn't in my life,
Okay.
you know, so like I said earlier, my mother was a single mother. She did the best that she could, you know, she was a great mother, but she struggled herself, not with substances, but just a little bit with some depression and just being a single mother. And she knew because she saw a change in my appearance and a change in my behavior, like you had mentioned. And, you know, she did what she could to try to help me. And, you know, one thing I won't ever forget is one day when I walked in on my mom in her room and she was praying for me. Wow. And I really believe that it's the power of a praying mother that played another huge part in me being successful in my recovery. Because my mom prayed for me, and she prayed for me hard. It's
great that you have that type of support. She recognized it. Again, most parents don't. The kids come in high, they're right upstairs at the bedroom. Mom and dad have no idea they're on anything, but they come home after a party, right up to the bedroom. Mom and dad don't even see them.
Yeah.
Next morning, they've recovered from it. They don't have a clue their kid has a problem. Let me ask you a quick personal question.
Sure.
Do you have a family right now?
I do.
What are you comfortable sharing?
I'm an open book. So I have 4 daughters. My oldest daughter is 23 years old. Her name's Lainey. My second daughter is 14 years old. Her name's Olivia. And their dad passed away from an overdose in 2016.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever been through, not just in my life, but in my recovery. And then I got married, my husband Mark, we got married in 2017, and we have twin girls,
nice.
Bryn and Tatum, and they're going to be 4.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
After your own battle with substances and what you've gone through, are you doing anything differently raising your kids? I mean, I don't know how to raise kids, but are you doing anything extra precaution, knowing what's out there that most parents that don't have that would do?
Yeah, I try to have a lot of open dialogue with my daughters. They all know, well, the twins don't know yet, but none of my daughter Olivia, my daughter Tatum, and my daughter Bryn, they've never seen me drunk or high, right?
Okay.
My oldest daughter was 4 going on 5 when I got sober. And I talked to her at length about what she remembers or if there's anything that she ever wanted to ask me. And she said that she just remembers me being in the bathroom for a long time when she was younger. But like I also had mentioned earlier, my daughter was one of the founding members of the Turn It Around youth group. So she learned a lot from being part of that program. She was in Turn It Around until she was about 18. And so being part of Turn It Around back then for me as a staff, didn't just teach my daughter about substance use and the dangers of it, but it also taught me to be a better parent and how to communicate with her better about it. My daughter Olivia, who's 14, she came to one of my recovery celebrations. I believe it was my 12th year celebration, and she heard it all. She heard everything that I did in my active addiction, and I had a conversation with her after, and I said, Olivia, is there anything that you want to ask me about what you heard me talk about tonight? Thinking she was going to ask me, why were you arrested before? Why did you stick a needle in your arm? Why did you overdose, or what does that mean? She didn't ask me any of those things. What she focused on was, I just want to know why, when you were a little girl, did you have to see your dad hit your mom? And so I have a lot of open dialogue and conversations with my 2 oldest daughters about the dangers of drug use and where it can bring you. They both know what happened to their dad. Not only did their dad pass away, but their uncle and aunt, their dad's sister and brother. So their Nana lost all 3 of her children. God. So they are very aware of the dangers, and we have very open communication about it.
Since you brought it up, can you share with us what were you arrested for and what was that like? And I'm doing this as an example.
Yeah.
The ramifications for what you do. You do something wrong, you're probably going to get arrested. You can't get away with it forever. What was it like when you were arrested, and let the people know what's in store for them?
So I was arrested for driving without a license in a hit and run of another car because I was under the influence. I had warrants because I had violation of probation. My mother was actually calling down the court on a regular basis saying, you know, she's out on Main Street in Charlestown, she's here, she's there, because she wanted me picked up. What that was like, it was scary. It was definitely something I never wanted to have happen again. You know, but I was sick, you know, and I didn't know what I didn't know.
Now let's talk about you personally for a minute.
Yeah.
You've mentioned you've got daughters.
Yep.
When you were growing up, did you have any siblings, brothers, sisters?
Yes, so I have an older sister, and I have a younger brother and a younger sister. My older sister doesn't have any substance use issues, but you know, when I was using, she stopped talking to me for a while, and I think I was about 2 years in recovery before she started talking to me again. I have a younger sister and a younger brother who have struggled with their own substance abuse issues. My sister Lauren is actually, she just celebrated 3 years in recovery, so she's doing really well.
Lauren, congratulations.
Yes. Yep.
What your brother, how close did they come? Did they ever have any overdose issues, or
No.
Or just recreation?
They didn't have any overdoses, at least not that I know of. I think I would know if they did. You know, my sister had some issues with car accidents and stuff like I had. My brother, he had some, you know, some fights or some altercations and things like that, but nothing to the level of where I was.
Did they ever see you do it and say, well, I want to be like Big Sis and let's try it? She's survived 1,000 times, it can't be that bad?
Yeah, I think more my sister Lauren that just celebrated 3 years. She also went through the Meridian House,
Okay.
because she knew that I went through the Meridian House, and she knew what it had done for me. She didn't stay sober after she left the Meridian House, but then, you know, she realized that she needed to get help and she needed to do this the right way, and she just really started going hard and going to a lot of meetings and talking to her sponsor and participating in her recovery and doing whatever she needed to do to sustain her recovery.
Now, since we're talking about houses, I see you guys you are involved with Chapters Recovery in Danvers.
Yes.
Now, we recently had Colin McMaster as our guest. What is your role with Chapters, and how do you day-to-day interact with Colin?
Yes, so Chapters Recovery Center just opened up in November.
Yes.
Of 2021. I started working there in January of 2022. And so my role there is I'm the Director of Recovery and Community Engagement. And so what my focus is kind of setting Chapters apart from all the other recovery centers. My goal is to build as many relationships, meaningful relationships as possible with the Danvers community and the surrounding areas, while utilizing my existing relationships from my previous role. You know, while it's important to us to partner with other recovery centers like Chapters, it's also important for us to partner with a lot of nonprofits and work with underserved populations and give back to those who are less fortunate. And we really want to focus on, our vision is to not just work with the individual who's living with substance use disorder, but to work to heal their families and the communities.
Now, I see that you're on the North Shore. I'm personally very happy to see things on the North Shore because obviously everybody knows Boston. I went to the finest hospital, if not Boston, in the world. That's the only reason I'm sitting here today, because of the surgeons that I worked with. And everybody's Boston. Nothing's local, maybe the outskirts. Or you have to go to New Hampshire. North Shore, I feel, is underserved in this area. And you opened up in Danvers. I know you work with Brian Tagg a lot. Everybody knows Brian. He's one of my guests. And like that TV show, they say 6 degrees of that famous actor. I could probably say 8 of my guests were somewhere within 6 degrees of Brian Tagg.
You know, Brian lives in Charlestown now.
Oh, great. Yeah. I know he just got married.
Yes,
I called him on his honeymoon looking for a guest. You were highly recommended. I work with Brian.
You.
I have people out there looking for high-quality guests that can come on my show, and I think Brian's a good resource. And Brian obviously recommended Shannon, and he recommended Colin, and I'm very pleased to be working with these organizations that can get me such guests that can help out. So How do you interact with Brian on a daily basis?
Yeah, Brian and I try to meet once a week. We talk a lot on the phone, we text a lot. I think that Brian and I have the same mindset in a lot of ways in the way that we want to serve this particular population. He's a funny guy,
Oh, yeah.
you know, he makes me laugh. But yeah, Brian's great.
He's at all the community events
Yes,
out on the common
yes,
and stuff, so
yes.
he's very involved. And I'm very pleased to have met him. And obviously, if you don't know who he is, you can look at one of my shows. You can look it up, Brian Tagg. He was a guest here and has multiple enterprises going for himself. I'm glad to see everything's worked out for him. Now, what do you see in the future? Do you see this getting worse now, especially with the Omicron coming in and more people are now getting more stressed out and have to live like hermits in our own little caves?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are not necessarily stressed out about Omicron. I think they're stressed out about the division that's been happening in our country. I think that a lot of people realize that they need to do what they need to do as far as their recovery. So while there are a lot of people who are nervous or were scared in regards to COVID, I feel like people in the recovery community are more afraid of relapsing than they are of COVID.
Now, obviously, you're with several groups and you do some fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be showing on the screen in a little while
Yeah.
some of the events that are coming up. What can you tell us about those events?
So we got a lot of events coming up that I'm excited about. Right now, we are doing something called Adopt a Pole.
Okay.
So I'm partnering with Chapters Recovery Center is partnering with a few different organizations. We are partnering with North Suffolk Mental Health. We are partnering with All Roads Lead to Charlestown, Turn It Around, and Think of Michael. And so my plan was to just do this in Charlestown this year and expand it to other communities next year once I saw how it went, because this is the first time I'm doing this. And so folks can adopt a pole in memory of a loved one lost to addiction. And so we are going to put a big purple ribbon on the poles in the Charlestown community with a tag in memory of so-and-so with their year of birth and their year of passing. And you can send an email to me if you want to adopt a pole in Charlestown with your loved one's information, but we're also doing it in other communities, East Boston, Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop. And so there's an email address that'll be on the flyer that you can send your information of your loved one to Rose Stone with North Suffolk Mental Health.
Which sounds a lot easier than having to do a walkathon and walk 20 miles or ride a bike for 50 miles.
Yes.
You can do it right from your home. What else do you have coming up?
August 31st is Overdose Awareness Day, International Overdose Awareness Day. August is Overdose Awareness Month. So in Charlestown, we have what's called the Charlestown Peace Park. It's at the Mount Vernon Plaza. And so what we are going to be doing there is we're going to be having a little cookout, and folks who haven't had a chance to meet the Charlestown Trauma Response Team can come there and meet us and learn about what we do with the trauma response, because overdose is a traumatic event. But we are also going to we have this sort of big, giant purple ribbon.
Okay.
And so then we will have smaller purple ribbons where folks can come and write their loved one's name on the ribbon and pin it to the bigger ribbon in honor of their loved ones.
So it's getting the crowd to know what's going on.
Yes, and that's going to be from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Of course, this is 2022 for people that are watching back episodes of this.
Mm-hmm.
So on August 31st is Awareness Day, actually.
Yep, International Overdose Awareness Day.
And you've got me trained. Camera, see, I've got my purple tie.
Purple on. I should have worn purple.
They've got me trained from the last show, or from last year's shows.
Yeah.
Any other events coming up before we wrap up?
Yes, we have another event. So on September 24th, which is a Saturday, it's the Charlestown Annual Candlelight Vigil.
Okay.
And so this is sort of my baby. This is really, really close to my heart. And so when I first started doing this vigil in Charlestown, we do a slideshow of pictures of folks who have lost loved ones. And the first year that I started the vigil, there was probably about 25 pictures, but I knew that there was a lot more that should have been in there, right? Back then, folks still had a lot of guilt and shame around how their loved ones died. Over the years, unfortunately, there's been more pictures added to the slideshow. We probably have close to 300. But more and more people are coming out to the vigil to remember their loved one, and it's very therapeutic for them. And it's sad, but it's healing. So that is on Saturday, September 24th. being sponsored by Chapters Recovery Center and doing work with Turn It Around. The Turn It Around kids will read the names of the individuals who passed away. And all roads lead to Charlestown. That's Saturday, September 24th, 6:30 p.m. at the Charlestown Peace Park, Mount Vernon Plaza.
You got one more you want to throw in there, or is that it?
Do I have one more?
Some people forget, so I try to prone.
I don't think I would like to, if I can say. So
Yeah.
I do run a grief group. It's under the Sun Will Rise, and so it is a grief group specific to folks who have lost loved ones to overdose. It doesn't matter what your relationship was to them, and we run that every other Wednesday in Charlestown from 6 to 7 p.m. at St. John's Church at 27 Devon Street. But if you want more info on that, please feel free to reach out.
Do you have any closing words for our viewers before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to say that gratitude is key when you're a person in recovery. I am so grateful to be where I am in my life, and I really feel what was meant for my harm, God is using for good, and my passion is people and to help people in the same situation that I was once in. But for me, I have to say, without God in my life, because my faith is very important, I wouldn't be where I am. And I know a lot of people struggle with the God thing, but that's really what did it for me. I really believe that he set me free from a life of turmoil, and he's using what was meant for my harm for good.
I'm very happy you found your strength.
Yes.
Before our closing, I want to address something with our audience and viewers. After my last show, people noticed a little bit of a difference in me. I wasn't talking normally the way I used to. I looked a little on the tired side, and I dropped 55 pounds in 3 months. As of October, I've been having my own little battle with a medical condition that has nothing to do with substance. I'm not going to get into details. This isn't about me. This is Shannon's show. I took an awful lot of treatment in October, and then in February underwent a 12-hour operation. I obviously wasn't filming. In April, I did my first show with Julie Gage. What's ironic is Sunday night before filming, I was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. That was unplanned. 64 hours later, I was at this studio, at this desk, doing a show. On Monday morning, I was able to talk in 3-word sentences after having tubes down my throat. I'll be okay. I have a hard road ahead of me, but I'll be okay. I love doing this show, and things like this keep me going. So if you noticed a big difference in my appearance, a lot of weight loss, I'm going to be fine. I do have a road recovery ahead of me. Someday I'll have a show and share with you the entire thing. But I just wanted people to understand that I'm going through my own little battle. So when people say people are battling COVID, and people are battling drugs, and people are battling, until you've gone through something you really don't understand. And this thing hit me like a ton of bricks. And now I can understand when you look the next morning and say, okay, I made it, I'm here. So for all the people that emailed and blew my email up in my cell phone, thank you for your concern, but I am doing good. And I'll share more of that later in life with you guys. So thank you for viewing. And first I would like to thank our guest, Shannon Lundin, for appearing today.
Thank you for having me.
As always, thank you for watching. Please share this program with your social media friends. If you or someone you know is suffering from a substance abuse disorder, you can contact the Massachusetts Substance Use Helpline, and their toll-free number is 1-800-327-5050. This show can be seen on a rotating basis on Woburn Public Media stations and on demand at their website, and of course on YouTube. And yes, Woburn Public Media, this show does have its own YouTube channel that's out there. As always, thank you for the staff of Woburn Public Media Center for making this show possible. Without the behind-the-scenes help and all the major editing they do because of my bloopers, this show would not be possible without their help. So Lauren, Jen, my director, all the people on camera, Anthony, and of course Chris, one of the executive people, and of course Brian Ouellette, our executive director that keeps this whole place together. Thank you so much for working with me and allowing me to do this. I sit here for 30 minutes, I write a show. The hard work comes behind the camera and behind the scenes. So this would never, ever, ever be possible. And that's just for me, that's for everybody that puts a show on here, for all the people that are involved in this, that you never see their names. You never see their faces, and believe me, I could not do this without their expertise and their dedication to what I do. So I'd like everyone to enjoy our closing theme, Rise Above the Noise by Fireheart, who is also a former guest. Please listen through the credits for contact information. We have a ton of shows. This is show 31. We have 30 shows that are out there. So check out on the website. Check something on YouTube you may be interested in. There are a ton of guests out there with important information that could just save your or your child's life. For America in Crisis, Breaking the Cycle of Addiction, my name is David Hunt, and I am back. Also, before we end off the air, I have two very high-profile guests coming in for the month of September. One of them has a program that's been groundbreaking, that has done multiple shows and programs throughout, not just Massachusetts, but the country. I would have had him for the month of August, but he was out there with President Biden being recognized with programs he's established across the country. So I would have had him, but I think the president came first. I also have a high-profile guest. I'm not going to say the names, but he doesn't need an introduction. If you watch television, you know who this person is. I'm working very closely with developing show around him. So we have two high-profile guests I'm looking forward to working with in the month of September. So stay tuned, watch some of my past shows. Again, thank you for watching, and thank the wonderful staff that's been here, because I could not have done this without their help. Thank you.
Above the noise, you hear us cry. There are people who care. Listen to the sound if you dare. Rise above the noise in the air. The sound not heard is what we bear. Listen to the sound if you dare. Rise above the noise in the air. The sound not heard is what we bear. The whispers that I hear behind my back are those who never lost a child, a friend. So they lack a sense of loss, a peace that's gone with no return. Above the noise is how we cope, above the noise is how we learn. The most important things in life